Welcome to God Friday Discussions. Today we're going to be talking about centralization versus decentralization. And before we get started, I'll dive into a prayer. O divine providence, thou art the ever forgiving. O thou almighty God, thou art the gracious. Let this dearly loved servant of thine abide beneath the shadow of thy glory, and grant that this hapless and lowly one may prosper and flourish within the precincts of thy mercy. Give him to drink from the chalice of thy nearness, and let him abide under the shade of the blessed tree. Confer upon him the honor of attaining thy presence, and bestow him everlasting bliss. Graciously assist this surviving kindred of this noble soul to follow in the footsteps of their dear father, to show forth his character and conduct amongst all people, to follow thy path, seek thy good pleasure, and utter thy praise. Thou art the ever-loving God, the Lord of bounty. Abdul Baha. And to get started, I'll just go into the definitions. So, decentralization, noun, the transfer of control of an activity or organization to several local offices or authorities rather than to a single one. Um, and then for centralization, uh, the concentration of control of an activity or organization under a single authority, the centralization of all financial power in the hands of its leaders. That's it being used in a sentence. The action or processes of bringing activities together in one place. And then I looked up the etymology of center, and it looks like it comes from Greek, uh, which is comes from the word centron or kentron maybe, uh, which means sharp point, stationary point, or pair of compasses. Um, and Latin centrum uh, turned into Middle English center. And so again, it's like sharp point, stationary point of a pair of compasses, um, related to canteen to prick, which is, uh, yeah, also Latin Old French, I guess. So that's pretty cool. And I guess at the essence of it, it's very intuitive. Centralization is kind of like a point, like everything comes to a single thing. And it's a little like, I mean, and if we want to relate it a little to God, God in a way is kind of like the single thing. Um, again, like or I don't know, it's almost like rude to talk about God uh, in a way that quantifies him as a thing because we can't comprehend God. But if you will, it's like God is like a point, but God is also like everywhere, omnipotent too. So God's like centralized and decentralized at the same time in a way. Just kind of a
Well,
fun thought.
when when you say like centralization, like God is like the ultimate authority.
Yeah,
So there's no greater authority than God. So that's like the centralization aspect of it, I guess. What I would enter this conversation, I guess.
yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, God's like a centralized authority figure in a way. And then, so
Yeah,
I was kind of,
I guess when you compare it to when you have a comparison in your mind to earthly administration, and then the highest authority in an organization, for
mm,
example, like you have states in the United States, you have several states, but then you have the government, the central government, and then you have governments at a state level, right?
mm,
So, so you would equate um, the highest governance with the central government, with the in Washington, right? And then the governance at state level is subordinate to that um, authority.
Mm,
So I guess in that way, I think uh, Christianity and Islam sort of has a kind of a imagery that it kind of forms where God is at the head of of administration through the agency of his angels who do various things, right? So then you have this angel and the angel for rain and the angel for death and the angel, various angels. The angel of revelation, that's Gabriel, right? Michael, all these angels. So
hmm.
there's that kind of a imagery that forms in scripture for this type of topic. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was good. That was good.
Yeah. So I think we kind of take our you see where the problem, where the issue comes in. Okay, let's go from grassroots. Let's look at it from a grassroots perspective. Okay,
Mm,
let's say Jesus came or Muhammad came, right? So Jesus came and he preached a simple message, and there were a handful of people around him. Okay, that is like local authority, decentralized, right? All you got to do is you got to believe, you got to have faith, you know, you got to try to hang out with him to learn his teachings, right? But then what happens is the movement grows, Christianity grows, it's far and wide. Christendom becomes a powerhouse, right? There are Christians all over. Well, now you need a central authority. So you have the Catholic Church and the Pope. Pope is the central authority for Catholicism, you know?
mhm,
That was, of course, the earliest church, right? So that becomes a central authority with delegated power through its clergymen. So bishops and, you know, the bishops and the cardinals, and there's a hierarchy, right? I forget what it was exactly.
mhm,
Okay. To help the organization function. So it's like an organizational structure.
mm,
But from a grassroots level, it didn't exist. And I guess that's the complexity of religion, because the same thing happens with the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be on him. Um, he emerges as a community leader. You understand? Like almost like the equivalent of a church father, if you will, a community leader with a little band of people, who in secret go and listen to his teachings. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
And then, but eventually, after he passes on, well, then they end up with a state and an empire, right? So now you need to decide what format are you going to use to administer this empire? Is it going to be top heavy, meaning like you have the central authority and everything goes back to the center? Or is it going to be like semi autonomous regions with nominal allegiance to a common authority?
mm,
But really, they run on their own.
mhm,
You know, that's kind of the difficulty, the complexities that not only organizations have, like multinational organizations, companies, they deal with these type of complexities, but also big countries have this problem between the central government and the provinces. Like in your guys' case, you're a federation, right? So the states. There's often um, a bit of a push and pull between the central authority and the states. Sometimes laws get upgraded this way or downgraded that way. Sometimes government will say, okay, it's up to the states to decide on this. Sometimes they'll say, no, 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 no. This is not in the hands of the state. This is a issue of, you know, the office of the president. We're going to decide on this.
Mm.
There's, so that is very complex. And I think it's even more complicated when it comes to the organization of religion.
Mm.
So, because like if you're Catholic, you have to kind of play with the Pope. But what if you don't agree with the Pope? You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
how can the Pope really make rulings within the religion that is going to be universally conducive to all its members? Because can he possibly know what the circumstantial reality will be for a Catholic in Alaska when he's sitting in Italy? You know what I mean? Rome.
Well,
So
my understanding is that the Pope has like divine authority or something. So in like certain situations when he does or makes a decision, it's like a divine authority. So in theory, God should kind of handle that decision and have everything kind of taken into account. That's my thoughts on
yes,
it, at
because
least.
he's like the mouthpiece of God, right? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
the other problem is that not many people interpret religion for that to be a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So the nature of the religion might actually be non-central or decentralized in character. For
Mm.
example, the Protestant church is by its nature decentralized. There isn't one big guy who's in charge of all the churches,
Mm.
Yep.
right? And the same
Yep.
thing with Islam. Islam is decentralized in nature. We don't have like the supreme leader of the religion, like of Islam as a religion. Yes, you have like Iran who has their supreme leader, but that's the supreme leader of a country. You know what I mean? He doesn't speak for all. There isn't one person who speaks for all Muslims, for example.
Mm.
Gotcha.
But they do have one person who speaks for all Catholics, the Pope. You
Mm.
understand?
Mm.
So, I mean, there must be pros and cons on both sides. So, what do you guys think would be let's look at it that way. What would be the pros for a, a top heavy central authority, and what would be the pros for a decentralized organizational structure?
I've
What do you think?
I think I've actually put some thought into stuff like this because I'm an advocate for both, right? Uh Centralization with some form of decentralization. I mean, I think you need your checks and balances like you just described. Uh if you have completely like a decentralized religion, we'll call it, it's kind of like Wild West, people interpret things the way they interpret them, and they become the judge, the jury, the executioner. So yeah, in my opinion, you need both. I think we've had a similar conversation on this, like about government in the past, but like secularism versus uh, religion. I think you need both. You got to have some form of like central authority, but like give people the freedom to like uh, practice the religion in a manner that suits them.
And I think that's yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think like that's the what's cool about sects in religion. Like it's almost like, yeah, there are different authority styles and like different sects, and you could kind of pick the one that suits you best or something. Uh, like, yeah, I don't know. That seems like and when I was talking to ChatGPT, one of the ways, actually, let me just read it out. It talked about four different ways you can kind of measure decentralization. So the four different ways are authority structures, interpretation and practice, community involvement, and network of believers. But let me just go into that a little bit. So authority structures, like how much control is held by a central authority versus individual communities or leaders. Religions with decentralized structures often have more localized leadership and decision making. Interpretation and practice. Look at the diversity of interpretations and practices within the religion. More variation can indicate greater decentralization. Community involvement. Assess how much input and participation individual members have in religious activities and decisions. Decentralized religions often encourage more grassroots involvement. Network of believers. Examine the connectivity and autonomy among different congregations or groups within. So, yeah, I think uh, it could be interesting to maybe we can talk about Christianity, Islam, and Baha'i in terms of these different metrics and like maybe rank them, and we can actually like come up with a little score, um, you know, of each religion and how decentralized, completely, um, what's the word like qualitatively or it's arbitrarily, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at it, I mean, if we look at Christianity, just only Christianity to begin with, then the non-Catholic churches, the Protestant churches and its multiple offshoots, because there are hundreds, right,
Mm-hmm.
is the most decentralized religion that's on earth, actually, I think.
Mm,
Because it's the most decentralized because they isn't in most Christian sects, there isn't a superstructure. You
mm,
understand what I'm
mm-hmm,
saying? So, for example, if you uh, belong to one Protestant church, or you're a Baptist, or uh, you are I don't know, Unitarian Universalist, or you Calvinist, or whatever you are, right? These kinds of churches, and then there's various other churches that spring up, right? They can sort of operate on their own, like within a community. You can have literally have a church within a community, a local community that has a culture, and that church can uphold the cultural mores and customs of that community, independent of any other church. You know what I'm
mm-hmm,
saying?
mm-hmm.
And that makes it the most decentralized. You know, the Protestant, the breakaway. And then obviously within Christendom also, I think also has the most centralized religion, which is the Catholic religion. Catholicism is the most centralized on earth. It has the most. It's actually the most. It has the most adherents. Catholicism has over a billion people, right? Who are jointly connected to one person, the Pope,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So Catholicism is actually the most centralized religion. So
Mm-hmm.
both within Christianity, you have most decentralized and the most centralized. And then substructures, of course, there's offshoots from Catholicism, like the Anglican Church, for example, whose rituals and customs are almost exactly the same like the Catholics, but they're
Mm,
not Catholic.
mm.
And so they actually still adhere to a superstructure. So they do belong to a global organization of churches, and they have deacons and pastors and different level hierarchies, you know,
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
and a board of directors and all of that. So they do run like so some churches run like a unified organization, and others they just not, you know.
Mm.
So for me, those are two good examples of opposite sort of extremes
Yeah, and it makes
within
it really hard to
Christian.
measure
Yeah.
in terms of decentralization because, like you said, they have the two polar, like the two different, they have centralization and decentralization in it. So does that make
Mhm.
it like half halfway? Because half are like not half, but if it was half, like half are decentralized, half are centralized, or
Well,
yeah.
you look at like United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're a democratic republic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like a lot of people like to say, we're a democracy, but we're actually a republic. But we're a democratic republic. We appoint, we vote for our elected officials that decide what's best for us, essentially, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
guess we're just saying it's going to sound weird. It's a decentralized centralization,
Mm-hmm. Right.
you know.
Right.
So yeah, that's I guess the only way I can explain it.
Yeah. It's almost like you have to measure decentralization by um like nodes or something, like how many centralized figures, and then some centralized figures are bigger than others or something. So it can be, yeah,
Mhm.
that's very confusing. In Baha'i, there's no clergy. So it's just people get elected though in the regions, and then those people who get elected elect the people like in the national thing, and then the national people elect the international people. And it's actually it's pretty centralized. So yeah, I'm kind of interested to see um or to yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how we rank the different religions and stuff. Um would you guys want to do
Well,
that?
you see, Baha'ism is actually a very centralized.
Yeah.
Islam is an organization. It's a religious organization.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Like Catholicism is a religious organization,
Mm-hmm.
but Protestantism and Islam is not a religious organization.
Mm. Yeah, I never really
Understand? Like the
registered that.
mosque, for example, the mosque doesn't collect tithes because there isn't a membership. I don't belong to a particular mosque.
Mm.
I get to walk into any mosque.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because Islam doesn't have a superpower structure, or at least not anymore, that represents a central authority. It used to have that up until 1922, but it doesn't have that anymore, right?
What
But
happened at 1922?
the the caliphate was abolished in 1922.
Oh, and what was the caliphate again? That's like the king or the
Okay, the caliphate is basically was the ruler of the Muslim world. So from
like
the time of the
the
Prophet,
Pope equivalent kind of thing?
almost no more powerful than the Pope, because the Pope is the religious ruler of Catholicism. The Caliph was the singular political ruler of the Muslim world.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
the Muslim world, from the time of the Prophet all the way to 1922, always had a Caliph.
Oh,
You
wow.
understand? Right?
Gotcha.
So the last seat of the Caliph was in Turkey. So the Caliph, the position of the Caliph it never always used to be in one region. So in the beginning, of course, in the early Islam, the Caliphate was in, in what's now Saudi Arabia, right?
Hmm.
And then it moved to Iraq, and then it moved to Turkey, basically.
Oh.
At one point, it moved to Syria, and then it moved to Turkey. So basically, but the Muslim political structure or the super political structure was to always accept one person as the head of the entire global community.
Hmm.
That lasted up until 1922. So then it was very centralized.
Oh.
It was politically centralized
You're
only,
muted, Matt.
but not religiously.
Sorry.
It was politically centralized, but not religiously central. So the
Ah,
caliph was responsible for ensuring the safety of the global Muslim community.
Oh.
But that didn't mean that indigenous cultural practices were not allowed to flourish.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Because, of course, I mean, he was now the head of a community that spoke hundreds of languages, different languages. So there was no way to control all of that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So that, but he was the political authority. Yeah. So, and back in the day, he was also the only one with the legitimate right. That's why there's a lot of chaos now in the Muslim world, because they came from a system with central authority, and according to the laws, the caliph was the only one who had the right to declare war. It wasn't up to individual groups or
Did he ever do
anyone.
that?
Oh
Definitely.
yeah, of course, throughout history. Yeah,
Okay.
because he had the only right to declare actual war. Because if he declared a war, then Muslims were all obligated to participate in the war,
Hmm. Dang.
Wow.
and that
That's a
system collapsed in 1922. Yeah,
yeah, that's interesting. 1922. That's around the time that the Anglo Saxons went over there, drew lines in the sand for the oil, essentially.
exactly.
So
That's what, because the caliphate collapsed. They helped the caliphate collapse. In fact, the Anglo Saxons, what they did was they formed alliances with various Arab tribes to instigate the collapse of the caliphate,
Oh.
and then they promised the Arabs that they would have an Arab um, ruler for all Arabs. And then, of course, that promise didn't come to fruition. They just needed them to help them overthrow the caliphate. Yeah.
So it
yeah,
was an
that's
overthrowing that took place. It wasn't like a planned
Yes, it
thing.
was an overthrow. No, no, no,
well,
it
it was
wasn't a
like
planting. It was
it was like these oil companies went in there and they realized the regions that were really rich in oil, and they put people in charge, I guess, that would support them, and essentially like
Mhm,
divided the Arabian kingdom, right?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. What they did was they promised the warlords in the Arabian Peninsula that they'd each become kings if they got rid of this guy, the central guy. You understand? And
That's
because
heavy.
the caliph, the caliphate was based on loyalties, they actually didn't police these people. You know what I'm saying? It was established loyalties. Remember the last caliph, the Ottoman Empire lasted for 600 years. So 600 years of loyalty, they didn't expect that to happen. You understand? Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, mm, yeah.
That's really interesting.
Mhm.
I wonder how the it really has me thinking. I wonder how the world dynamic would look if the Muslim world was still under one authority.
Oh, it would look very different. I mean, you wouldn't have what's happening in Palestine today. You definitely wouldn't have that, you know. So it would have looked very different, of course, because if
He'd
they
be
were under
making
one
deals with
authority,
like Israel and stuff, the caliphate.
Well,
well, they
why?
would, well, Israel wouldn't exist. To be
Uh,
honest, Israel wouldn't have existed because
uh,
Israel only came into existence in 1948.
yeah,
Yeah,
after World War II, yeah.
Israel was reliant on the collapse of the Muslim Empire to exist.
Mm. Hmm.
Otherwise, they would not have existed. That's
Hmm.
the reality. But no, the world dynamic would have looked very different, of course, because then Muslims would be powerful, so they could leverage the fact that they're powerful on their behalf, But I think that this is the nature of empires, all empires. They rise and they fall, you know.
Hmm.
They rise and then look. To be fair, that even the Muslim empire decay set in. They became very wealthy and they became complacent and they became lazy and they became and they were just not anymore at the helm of science and technology, and all those things are important for an empire. You know, the minute as an empire, become complacent and lazy and decadent and materialistic, it's just only a matter of time. The clock is ticking. You know. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's why every important empire, like right now, for example, the American Empire, a lot of the skill of scientists, you know, and futurists and people like that, right, are attracted to come to America because the way that you stay relevant as an empire is you need to be at the helm of knowledge, science, technology, and everything else. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's how you stay on top. Really, it's not. It's although people will think it's the military, but really it's not the military. You know. Yeah.
Well, the military, I guess, is kind of like just a way to protect your country, not like from within, but from without. Uh, yeah, yeah, that's it. This is a heavy conversation, man. Really got me thinking about how this
But
dynamic would
every
look.
country, of course, I mean, you can't be a country without a military, right? You got to be able to defend your borders. You know?
Well, Costa
But
Rica, Costa Rica doesn't have a military.
protection, American protection, isn't it? You either have a military or you fall under the protection of another military.
Interesting. You're right. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So
Except for like
in
the
a lot
North
of countries
Pole.
actually fall under a lot of countries fall under the protection of the United States, actually, you know, who pay their dues. I mean, that's always how empires operated. So yeah, but it's also look, it's very complicated because you see a lot of the empires disintegrate literally because of overreach.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Centralized authority
So like
overreaching.
The Muslim empire got so big they couldn't control it anymore.
Mm.
Because they keep taking over, taking over, taking over. In the end, they can't administrate
Centralized authority
empire.
doesn't
That's
work
what
at
happened with the
scale.
British at scale. That's the problem. Yes,
Mm.
because you see the central administration can't really keep track of everything that's going on around such a vast. You know?
Yeah, that I
But
mean it.
then the local.
Yeah, that reminds me of a letter I was looking up like decentralization in one of these apps, and I saw a letter that was from Shoghi Effendi, kind of saying how um, the cause needs to keep a certain amount of centralization, but not so much that it's like it doesn't want to like uh, administer every little nitty-gritty detail of everything. The centralized portion is more of like the general picture and the general vision and mission to move forward. And then at the grassroots level is where the details and whatever are sorted out in terms of, I don't know, activities and stuff.
Mhm. I also think central authority should have mainly been. I mean, the what I envision is that central authority should mainly be for dispute resolution. Also,
Sure, yeah.
finally, when there's like, for example, warring tribes, it happens a lot in the Islamic world, and then the central authority steps in and creates a peace treaty between the warring tribes. You know,
Mm,
to say, okay, this is what we're gonna do. You know what I mean
mm.
about this kind of a situation. So that I think, but personally, my personal preference is actually
Uh-oh, you froze.
that central authority to, you hear me now?
Yeah, you said some your first preference is that something?
Yeah, my first preference is actually to limit central authority because I also see that central authority often creates stagnation and it turns into authoritarianism.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can see with example the Catholic Church, right? You
Hmm.
can see that Catholic Mass, for example, is not something that the youth are interested in because it's boring, it's stale, it's mechanical, it's the same thing exactly all the time, and then that's very scripted and prescriptive. And it doesn't allow flexibility, and so it creates stagnation.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And then people just become sort of nominally Catholic, like
Sure.
non-practicing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they
So
kind of
I
just
think
go
that
through the motions.
you just go through the motions, right? It's the same thing week in and week out, you know? And you
Sure.
learn to say Latin mass, but you don't, who speaks Latin? Anyway, the point is, I mean, that's kind of what happens with central authority, because central authority likes to keep things the same because that's easier to make to manage the situation.
Totally.
Stay the
Yeah.
same, exactly
Hmm.
the same, you know? I feel like strong centralization creates stagnation, and it also sort of makes the organization irrelevant over time, you know? Because
Yeah, because
usually
they're
it's
not
these
able to
old
like
guys
change or anything.
that can't change. And it's usually these old guys who are on top, that's like 60, 70, 80 years old, right? And who's out of touch.
Mm.
You understand? So I feel like centralization or central authority should be minimal. It should just be those bare minimal things that are important in order to keep the unity of the organization, but it should not be overly prescriptive. So local leaders, grassroots people should be able to act with relative autonomy as long as their allegiance is to the organization or the central authority of the organization, whether that's a person or code or what. And also, personally, I feel it should be a code. You know, it should be
Mm.
code based, not person based. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much exactly what Shogi Effendi was saying. And then to speak to Matt's point earlier, and what Shogi Effendi said as well, is
Oh,
that
who is Shogi offended?
Shogi Effendi is like Baha'u'llah's grandson, yeah, grandson, because he's Abdul
Oh,
Baha's son.
okay.
And but he was saying how decentralization, too much decentralization leads to like, just people kind of going a little all over the place, and interpretations can, just go everywhere, and it creates chaos too. It can create chaos, I guess. So it's, I guess, yeah, like as usual, it's finding that balance.
Mhm, mhm.
But then, yeah, I think it's interesting too, because Yassine, you said the most decentralized was probably Christianity. And I think, yeah, I think Christianity is super decentralized. And it seems like all religions are actually very decentralized in ways. And Hinduism actually came up as like one of the really decentralized ones, because in India, you have all sorts of religions, and you go into a village, it's a different religion. And so I think Hinduism really speaks to the like kind of maxing decentralization out a little bit, I think.
Well, you see, but Hinduism isn't a religion.
Oh,
That's the other thing that ChatGPT is not going to tell you. Hinduism is not a religion.
yeah,
Hinduism is the collective term for the religions of Hindustan, of India.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
froze again.
No.
Uh, there isn't a doctrine that you can. There we go. Is it on again? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on.
Where did I cut off?
India.
Hinduism is a collection of religions.
Mhm.
Yes, there isn't a specific doctrine that you can call Hinduism. Hinduism is a lot of religions. So I guess that's why you can say it decentralized, but actually it's not a religion. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. In my brain, it's like categorized as a religion, but yeah, there's not like a consistent thing going on with their if you go to India, I'm sure there's like all these different things, so and you would still call it Hinduism because it's in India. So, yeah, that's
Well, I guess Hinduism would like describe
hit India. It's just like
like
religions of it's a country thing. But then it's interesting that
well,
people call
so
Mhm.
themselves Hindu.
yeah, so I just learned what you just told me. I never knew that, but if what I'm gathering correctly, Hinduism would be like saying, the Abrahamic religions. So
Mm,
Abrahamic within itself is the way we describe the religions that derive from Abraham, right? Obviously, Islam, uh, Judaism, and Christianity. But the Abrahamic would not be a religion. So it would be like saying, "Are you Abrahamic?" Right?
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm making my point well, but
Mhm.
yeah, just trying to explain it in a way I understand it.
no, yeah, that kind of
Mhm.
makes sense.
No, I mean, what the way that it would make sense, Matt, is if they just identified the Abrahamic religions with the Middle East, then it would make sense.
Hmm.
Because then you would say, okay, the religions of the Middle East, the Abrahamic religions,
A,
you
uh,
know, because Hinduism
Arabic,
is named,
Arabic, Arabic.
Arabic.
because Hinduism is named after a country, right? India is called Hindustan, the land of the Hindus, Hindustan. So it would be like that. But the big difference is that you see the Abrahamic religions have like prophets in common and books in common and traditions in common and patriarchy in common and so many things.
Continuity.
But Hinduism doesn't have that continuity. It's very diverse, very diverse.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, people don't even worship the same gods village to village. You understand?
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
me think about like Jesus going to India because I've heard things about Jesus going to India and like I'd imagine like people followed him and then made their own like Christianity things that turned into things and evolved into other things or something. I don't know, just imagining.
No, I mean, they are even Hindus. When Muslims went to India, there were Hindus who said, look, there's no problem. We don't have a problem. They just put a placard up and said, okay, we're going to worship Lord Allah and Lord Muhammad and Lord Krishna and Lord. Because, I mean, it's a polytheistic mindset, right? Multiple gods. So, so that's what was always the difficulty with India, even for Islam, when Islam got there,
Mm.
Islam couldn't really penetrate India
Because everyone was like, "Oh,
to the
your
extent
God
that
is this, my God's this. That's cool."
yeah, exactly. It was like now you want to say that, oh, there's only one God. That's kind of unfair in their mind, because
Okay.
Islam comes and Islam says, well, these are all false gods, right?
Oh.
You got to worship the one unseen God who you can't see. Like what?
Hmm.
We got to worship a God we can't see.
Oh.
You know, we can worship your God, but then you got to worship our gods too. It was a very difficult prospect, for
Yeah, I can
monotheism.
imagine the
India was a
conversations.
difficult prospect for monotheism. Yeah, I mean, until now, it's difficult. In India, monotheism is still a difficult prospect. You know,
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And then like another point I thought was kind of interesting was the evolution of centralization to decentralization. like from the Catholic Church to the Protestant movement, and like the movement from Britain to the US, and how the US kind of represents a little bit of the decentralized movement of Christianity, and maybe Britain's a little more representative of the centralized Christian mindset, but I don't know. I'm just kind of talking from my butt. What do you guys think?
I think,
Well, we have the Church of England.
yeah,
Church of England is became the superstructure for England
Mm.
when they broke away from the Catholic Church. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So, because they too were Catholic
Right.
in the beginning, so they broke away from the Catholic Church and they started the Church of England. And then that became the official state religion. What you got to remember is that in the past, people couldn't envision, even into the recent past, state religion. As much as we say we are secular, even Western democracies couldn't imagine a state without a state religion.
Mm.
Think about it, okay?
Hmm.
The majority of presidents of the United States were Protestant. You guys killed your Catholic presidents, right?
Hmm.
So the yes, think about it. What was Kennedy?
Oh, okay.
was it
I no, I
Catholic?
didn't know. I didn't know there was a pattern there.
Yes, yes,
Tell me more.
yes. But America envisioned itself as a Christian state, a Protestant Christian state,
Hmm. Yeah.
and most of the presidents were Protestant. And when people campaign, like President Obama, when he campaigned, they all have to show this footage where they go to the Protestant church. That's part of the culture. That's part of the heritage, and they got to get sworn in on the Bible, etc.
Hmm.
It is fundamentally, or it has its ties to Protestantism, the Protestant church, then as a state. That's because of its Irish heritage. I don't know if you know European history, but there was a brutal war between the Catholics and the Protestants. You know?
That makes sense. I
Yeah.
don't know the history exactly, but I know like Protestant is they were protesting the Catholic Church, right? That's where they got the name from.
Mhm.
And I'd imagine with when
Yeah.
the church
So,
has soldiers,
so
they
that's
respond.
why that the way that America was formed, the ideals of America is very much to shorten the distance to power. So the tradition where the president comes out and then everyone can ask him questions
Mm-hmm.
down to the lowest common of the street, right?
Hmm.
This was this was a tradition that was established that uh, that basically tried to break away with the English tradition of lords and and hierarchies, you know, to kind of have a tradition of equality. Understand? So,
Hmm.
I mean, the way America was formed was in opposition to that stale European culture,
Right, right.
the English culture of peasants and lords. Why they lorded themselves as the land of opportunity, that anyone can come here from it doesn't matter where, what background, and what religion, and what culture, and if they work hard, they can make it. Which is
When
true, is still true about America, actually.
hmm.
I think. But that was in direct opposition to where they came from. A lot of what Americans, originally, the Irish and that, they were treated as peasants and slaves. You
Yeah,
understand?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah,
kind
it
of the
I, I can't help but think, but where does like the centralization aspect, is that just like our human nature? Like we gravitate towards having like a central uh, figure, because I think when Christianity was first formed, the name wasn't even Christianity, right? That's a term not used until like centuries after Christ even died. So people were actually who were followers of Christ, they believed they were Jews, and I don't know what they called themselves, Messianic Jews. They believed Jesus was the Messiah, right? And when he was forming, when Jesus created the new temple, as he promised, he'd destroy and rebuild the temple in 3 days. And the idea behind it was to get away from what the Jews were doing. So the Jews had their synagogue and their central figure authority, where these people became uh, so mighty, so their heads so high in the clouds that they kind of missed the religious aspect of it. They were the religion, right? But the Catholic Church shortly formed, 200-300 years after uh, Christ, and it kind of mirrored the Jewish Church essentially. If we looked at a Catholic Church today, I bet in the times like when Jesus was roaming, it wouldn't be much different than a Jewish temple. So I wonder. I just can't help but think. I wonder if it's us that like create this centralization aspect of it because we need it. You know, or maybe we think we need it, or do we do it to regain power? Because it seems like that's what happened with the Catholic Church, right? It became the absolute law. It became the authority. Like there was no authority above the Pope, right? He was the tell-all. Even the kings had to answer to the Pope. So I wonder when we get to the central, just when we how we get to the centralization aspect, like it's got me really thinking.
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about like cycling and how maybe it's a matter of cycling, right? You kind of want to cycle between centralization and decentralization in order to go where you want to go or something like that. And but yeah, I don't know. That was just kind of a general thought. But in terms of like just like the movements that you see take place, like there's a centralized authority and then there's a decentralized movement to like go away from that, and then maybe the decentralized movements become centralized, and then there's another movement to like decentralize from that. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of a cool image to think of, like fireworks,
It,
keeping off of fireworks.
yeah, I was just
You see,
thinking,
the
like, do
problem.
we?
Go for it, man.
No, I was just thinking, do we, as human beings, is it in our nature to create this centralization because we want authority or we want to be the authority? It seems like that's what it is. It's not like something I think God designed to have like a central authority here on earth. He wanted everything to be centered around him.
I think that, yeah, I
But
think that's an interesting point. I think there is like this tendency for the ego to want to be like God or something and have like have this all-powerful thing. But to defend centralization a little bit, like it's not necessarily, maybe it's not fully an ego thing, right? Maybe there is a utility behind it, is that like centralized things can move fast and do things like quickly, but decentralized things, it's like maybe the solutions are better, but it takes longer to come up with them and sort things out and stuff. So an advantage to centralized authority is that it is pretty fast moving and it can be decisive in terms of making decisions and stuff like that.
Yes, that's true about central authority. I mean, I've experienced it living in kingdoms. For example, with the COVID vaccination stories, other
Mm.
countries were still trying to decide whether people should have the right to refuse, etc., etc. But in kingdoms, they just said everyone's taking it tomorrow, and then it was done. You understand? So yes,
And it was good.
so they do have a way of moving things along quite fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But But the problem with I'll give you a problem with, like, for example, Rome and the Catholic Church, right? When they decided, for example, I forget now, it's called the Council of Nicaea, I think.
Mm,
When they decided which gospels are going to be included in the Bible,
mm,
right? They went on to persecute everyone else who had a gospel and didn't agree, or didn't agree with Rome's interpretation of Christianity.
mm.
Oh, and some of those people were also very devout Christians, you know?
Yeah, I've
So,
been getting really into the Gnostic Gospels, and so this is like making me think of the Gnostic Gospels and how we're only I guess like it's hard to find examples of them because they're only like surfaced more recently, which like makes them seem like okay, this could have been faked for sure, but at the same time, I don't know, like there's like people like I don't know. I'd imagine there's some sort of reason for thinking they're authentic too. Um, but shoot, I lost my train of thought.
Well, no, when you get into like the Gnostic
but what
Gospels,
I'm saying is the thing about central authority is
Yeah.
that's the thing about central authority. Like if I'm the central authority on something, right, a movement,
Hmm.
right, I say what it is, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who's going to disagree with me, chop chop, you know. And that's a big problem with central authority, especially in religion, because religion is supposed to be your personal conviction and beliefs. And so, how do you dictate what people's personal convictions and beliefs ought to be within the religion? You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Now, I get that you can establish it over time. For example, you can crystallize the perceptions of the central authority into a doctrine over many years. You understand?
Hmm.
But then, will that be the truth? You get what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
there's that is the danger, I think, with religion. I think in order for religion to arrive at its best form,
oh
possibility of debate, and there needs to be the possibility of challenging religious authorities.
yes, I think that's the key. That's why I said I believe in centralization with some decentralization in it as well. You got to have like a fundamental aspect of it, like the way you describe the United States, like the government should be responsible for the infrastructure, the military, highways, logistics, things of that nature, right? And
Mhm,
leave the morality up to like the states of how they want to operate. You know what I mean? And hold
mhm,
them accountable for the way they operate. So
mhm,
applying that to religion in an aspect, um, I think it's good to have an authority that can interpret something like the original way it was probably meant to be interpreted. Too often we see
mhm,
these days that people misinterpret things because they're actually looking at it through a modern day lens, not understanding the culture or the context of what was actually
mhm,
being written or uh, told during that time. So yeah, decentralization. You should be able to challenge the authority if you don't understand or disagree with the authority. There should be a healthy way of going about it without creating havoc and war, obviously. But yeah, yeah, I agree with you 100%.
You see, let me give you. Let's think up a scenario, okay, like a concrete scenario. Let's say that the three of us, we want to establish, we were believers in the Bible, and we want to establish a Christian state. Okay, use Islamic State as an example because there's too many negative things around that, right? So let's say we want to establish a Christian state, but now we have the Bible, and the Bible has certain laws, right? So we read Leviticus and these law-giving chapters, right? And there are various these laws, of course. So, what would be the responsible way to decide how to take on that is to bring in people who study scripture, right? A bunch of them all together, right? Throw them in a room and say, right, we are together going to flesh out what the code will be under Christendom. In other words, we all agree this is the law of God, but even the law of God needs to be interpreted, right? So, how are we going to interpret this law for our state? All 20, 30, 40 of us in this, building, right? That's what we're going to collectively work on here. You know what I'm saying? Because the main thing is, I think, is that there is a robust discussion and then there is a robust agreement. It doesn't have to look the same for each place. So let's say, for example, now in our Christian state, we have worked out how we interpret the law under the conventions of the Bible, right? But remember that we come from a custom and a culture collectively in this place where we live, right?
Uh-oh.
The law. Right? Can you hear me?
Freezing up.
You broke up
Yeah.
right when you were talking that on the last part.
I said that our customs, we interpret the law, even as a collective. Can you hear me?
Our culture determines how we interpret the law. Is that what you said?
Yes. So let's say there's a bunch of other guys in another place, and they take on the same project we took on. Okay? In the exact same way. They might come up with a different set of conventions using the same book. Understand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's what I'm saying is that's fine. That's perfectly fine. That's the way I see it. I don't know what you
Hmm.
guys think about that. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I think in a broad perspective that might be functional. And I think when you start to get into like the fine detail, some things can be definitely be misinterpreted. Um, there's like amongst Christianity, there's a lot of different arguments between the different denominations, right? There's certain denominations that don't believe in the Holy Trinity at all, right? Um, and actually think it's like demonic to believe in it, but there's uh, no language that suggests that that's the case. But there's also no language that suggests that the Holy Trinity is like a real thing too. It's all kind of like interpreted, you know. So one says if you don't believe in it this way, you're going to hell. One says if you don't believe in it this way, you're going to hell. So I think you got to have some type of central, because you can have a deep polarization on like those fine topics, and some of these
Yeah,
details
but the
are
thing is, what has that got to do with the function of state and law? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, as Christians, if we were all Christian now, right? That would be up to your individual conscience, how you think is the best way to believe in God. You understand? But that's not going to determine whether stealing is wrong, or murder is wrong, or rape is wrong, or other number of things. Do you get what I'm saying?
well,
So
yeah, but we,
saying as a,
oh man,
Come back, Yassine. We lost you completely. Oh man, this is a good conversation.
yeah, his internet signal must have been bad. He'll probably pop back in any second. Well, to
Yeah.
get out what he was saying, to kind of touch on something he was saying. Um, We can all agree murder is wrong. We can all agree murder is wrong. We can all agree stealing is wrong. Respect your parents. We can all agree that these principles are good. But here in America, we have a debate on what's actually murder and what's not, right? Um, I think that there's not a single traditional Abrahamic religion that would disagree that abortion isn't murder, that abortion, how do I say it? They would all agree that abortion is murder. But here in the States, we got people that think, no, that's not murder because it's not a baby's not it's not a, it's a, they call it a parasite or they use, it's not a living thing. It's 100%, it's murder. But here we are, we have different states that can't agree on that. So yeah, we do come up with these issues on like the broad perspective of. That's why I said from a broad perspective, mostly we could agree on things, but when you leave it up to interpretation for each state, yeah, we got a bunch of states that can agree on that whether killing an unborn baby is murder or not.
No, but yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And yeah, that kind of speaks to, so like for me, uh I agree. I think it's hard for states to make these, like, yeah, these are just, uh kind of, I mean, yeah, not, I'm not even gonna get political with that whole thing, but um I think that when it comes to centralization and decentralization, um yeah, I you were bringing up some really good points, Matt, that I wanted to second, but um
You gotta still do what I started doing. You gotta get yourself a pen and paper and write it down, man.
I know, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, get yourself
Can
a
you
pen and
guys hear
paper
me
and write
now?
it
I've
down.
actually been taking notes
Yes,
on my
sir.
computer, but it's kind of hard. Yeah, I can hear you now,
Yes,
You
Yassine.
can hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
So
yes.
what I'm saying is, as a social experiment, first of all, we are all Christians in the experiment. Okay. Second of
Yes,
all, we
yes.
believe in the Bible. We believe in the Bible, right? But we are acutely aware that as readers and believers in the Bible, we might understand things differently. You understand? Which
Hmm.
is why we get a group of people together who study the Bible, right? And then we decide on the interpretation of the lore of the Bible, not on whether Jesus is God or not God or the Son of God or the Trinity, right? Because those are doctrinal. Those are not legal issues, those are doctrinal issues, right? I mean, someone can't be policed in their home or in the church when they kneel down, whether they pray to God the Father or God the Son. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I mean, it's out of the ambit, outside of the ambit of the law. And what I'm saying is, central authority that sees itself essentially as religious wants to control people's interaction with God. And that's what I think is wrong. You know what I mean?
Sure.
The
Yeah.
most you
Yeah.
can do, the most you can do is control people's interaction with other people in terms of securing their rights.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
i.e., the law, right? So that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I'm saying if another group of people carry out this exact same experiment in another region, the way they're going to view the law, even if they all come together, right, to agree on it, the way they're going to view it will be couched in their own culture. You understand? So if they come up with something different under the convention of the Bible, biblical law, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. What matters is that they try to judge by what they believe God has sent them.
I got
That's
you.
what I,
I follow what you're
yeah.
saying. It's not yeah, I get it. I was taking it a different direction because we have, issues here of interpreting what murder is and what isn't murder. And we shouldn't be defining murder. We should allow God to define murder, right? So if God
Mhm,
says that this is murder, like that's it. There's no debate to it.
mhm.
If you go to another region and they're saying, this is okay, but the law, like you're saying, clearly states it's not okay. Yeah, we're you know, I guess that's what I was thinking, but I get exactly what you're saying now.
No,
Uh,
I
yeah,
think you were on point, Matt. Like I'm almost imagining Yassine asking the question as like in the United States, if people were all Christian and followed the Bible and believed in the Bible, everyone, then what would the laws look like in each state? You know, if states like is that ideal? Like is that ideal to have each state kind of and for me, I think it's better. I think that's still too much centralization. I think it still needs more decentralization and going to the city level and maybe even the neighborhood level. And then you can have like that's maybe that's when you can exercise like more smaller grain authority things over things because then you actually get the feedback at that level, right? If a top person like is making these calls and then people at the like everyone's complaining at the lower levels, they're like, man, who's making these calls up here? Then it's just a long communication line to go to those people at the top. But if it's local, if someone has an issue, then they just talk to the person in person or something, right? And the problem's resolved, and people can like learn
yeah,
from that and come up with best
yeah,
practices and share that.
yeah. But I think what your brother was saying was like these are like basic laws. I kind of agree with him. You can't leave up basic laws to each individual. Like let's just say that for example in the case of murder, right? Um, this is just an easy one to pick on. Like I don't want to get political either in this, but uh, Bib- the Bible clearly defines what is murder, right? But what if somebody uh, you go to a different city and this person says, abortion is perfectly fine, or let's even take it to a different level, like uh, what's like the proper what's like a proper sexual relationship, right? What if someone says, "Hey, I feel that I should be able to do something along the pedophile lines." You know what I mean? So yeah, you can't leave it up to like each individual that it gets down to each individual because we're at where we're at now in the United States because of that. Nobody can agree on anything because we cross these clearly defined lines. Now these laws are like blurred to the point that I don't know, we're questioning what is murder. What's a proper sexual relationship that people should be having. We can all 100% agree in this group that a man should not be having sex with a 6 year old girl, should not even be having any type of intimate relationship with a 6 year old girl, you know. But somebody if you get a community of pedophiles together, they might, oh no, you're telling me we got authority? Yeah, so within our community, we could say it's okay, it's a perfectly justifiable relationship because we don't see anything wrong with it because love is what we say, right? You know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think you have to have some type of central authority for the basic laws. And then I don't know, the fine detail, I guess you could leave up to certain amounts to
Okay,
like
I'll give you an
individuals.
example. Let me give you a concrete example. Okay, so in uh, one culture, for example, let's say the Bible says that the murderer should be put to death. Okay, now in our tribe where we live, there's a mountain. We live on a mountain. Okay, historically, when we when we put people to death, we just chuck them off the side of the mountain, right? So when you prescribe the death penalty in your town, when we call that into law, all of us automatically think that means we're going to chuck them off the side of the mountain. You understand? But in the next village, right, their version of the death penalty, right, was the guillotine, the French village, the guillotine. Okay, when their lawmakers came together and said, okay, we're gonna, for murder, we're gonna prescribe the death penalty. What they mean by it is the guillotine. You get what I'm saying? So the point is that the one who did the guillotine and the one who lived on the mountain and felt that that's how they always carried out the death penalty, right? Both of them followed the law of the Bible, although the execution of the law was different. That's what I'm saying, you know? And but what I'm saying is these differences will naturally occur because people have different perceptions of what a thing is based on human custom, the customs that they're familiar with. You know what I'm saying? I'll give you
Yeah.
another example. If the Bible said that fornication is wrong and people have to first get married before they have sex, right? And in one person's custom, it meant that the two of them have to jump over a broomstick, right? Nobody's going to say they're not married in their custom. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But in another custom, they'll be like, oh, what is this? This is absurd. You got to go to church and there's a priest and there's a, you get what I'm saying? So that's what I mean. I mean that there will be the way that people interpret things will be relevant to their customs that they are familiar with. But as long as there's a collective trying to uphold the law of God, then that's good enough. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said. And to take it to a different level of this conversation too, right? Like, how do we feel that should there be a central authority policing our sexual activity?
But you see, and also this is an example of decentralized governance, by the way. That's kind of what I was getting at. I was saying that the reason why you can't have too much, remember my original point was I don't like the idea of top heavy centralization, right? Because it ignores the local, it straight jackets and sometimes erases people's customary way of things, which can also be correct in the way
No,
they have interpreted. You get what I'm saying?
that
In the
was a
way that they have interpreted things, yeah.
yeah, that was a very good explanation. What you did, I guess, what I was asking. I don't know if anybody heard me, but like when we talk about a central broad authority with basic laws, right? These are the laws. How you execute the laws is up to you, right? But would how do you guys feel about, because the Western culture would definitely have a problem with this, but should the government be involved in your sexual activity? And I'm not talking about inappropriate sexual activity because that should be illegal by any means, right? But your sexual activity, say if you're just like someone having premarital sex, extramarital sex, or just sexual immorality, should the government be, should those laws be, uh,
Implemented.
yes.
And how would they be? Well, look, I mean, I have lived for a long time in an Islamic country where they do implement those laws. And these laws are difficult to implement. Those kinds of laws are difficult to implement because you can't see what people are doing behind closed doors. You understand? So they are difficult to implement, but through implementing them, at least they keep the facade of morality, which I think is important. The streets seem like there's morality. Like people are not doing their business out and about in public, you know? So I think to that extent, I think, yes, it helps to regulate people's sexual behavior publicly, in public. Because nobody can actually do it when it comes to people in private. You know what I mean? How do you do it? You can't.
No, that's a,
I
No?
well, it's also, go ahead,
I
Raj.
just to answer your question, I personally think that government should kind of stay out of the human sexual uh thing, like or like like more personal human control-y thing. I think that I personally am more on the lines of like government should be doing bare minimum kind of administrative tasks and um
Laissez-faire.
Now, let
huh,
me let me
yeah,
ask
yeah,
this
I'm more
question.
of the laissez-faire type, but
Mm.
Let me ask this question then.
not like yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the government should have like power, but minimal. It should just like do, do what it does and not try and do too much because I think that it
Well, let me ask.
yeah.
Yeah, let me ask this question then, because so we're on the topic of should the government regulate sexual activity in the United and should it regulate sexual activity, right? And you're under the, I guess what I'm
It's kind of
interpreting, you're
general though,
saying no.
like what
I
Well,
think
maybe be
adultery.
more
I think
specific.
definitely adultery should definitely be regulated.
Hmm.
Adultery, I think, is one that is clear and should be regulated. You should not be able to fuck someone else's person. Yeah. Right. So I think that should definitely be punished and regulated because that is very clear because you know when somebody's married, you know when it's a married woman, right? So that's a violation of the marriage and also it would break down society like completely because the family structure is central to the way the Bible envisions society, right? So the antithesis of that is adultery, is to disrupt people's bonds, of marriage. So yeah, I think that one should be. I mean, I don't know how a government can really control fornication, like as in premarital sex.
Well,
I
what?
don't think that
Oh,
you
well,
can. You
yeah, well
can't. I don't
that.
think you can really do that. I know
Well,
adultery is one something you can. You know. Yeah.
well, like you talked about how Saudi Arabia, they do regulate
Mhm.
it, and you have the facade even in the street because no one in public is doing any type of
Mhm.
like sexual immorality, right?
Mhm.
So saying that, Raj kind of like chimed in as well, and he said the government he feels probably should not be involved in like what we do sexually, but then should the government be involved in the consequences of what happens sexually then? So if a woman willingly has unprotected sex with a man and the man just chooses not to take care of the kid, should the government have to take care of the kid? You know? So
That's a
this is
good
where
question.
things
That's
get,
a good question. Mm.
so this is where I think things get complicated. You know what I mean? Like you can't say they should stay out of our business, but when we fuck up and we don't have any other person, oh, now help me, even though I knew what I was doing was wrong, you know? So,
Mm.
it's a complicated issue. You know what I mean? Everything isn't as easy as people like to explain it, I guess.
I
But
agree and
the
I
thing is,
disagree. I think it's a
the thing that
complicated issue when it comes to like the situations and stuff, but I think it's an easy issue in terms of what we need to do to like fix it is that I think it comes down to spiritual education and people going to church, people learning about God, learning about Jesus, learning about Muhammad, learning about these things and trying to put them into practice. Like then because like these like one thing with laws is like when judges judge people and like sentence them, they're not judging them necessarily by the word of the law, but by the spirit of the law. And I think the spirit of the law is something that maybe should be looked at and um, I think, and yeah, so I think the spirit of people is more important and just raising the spiritual level of people. Then then you're not going to need the laws, right? They're just going to do these things. You're not going to have rules and punishments to incentivize people as much. Like, yes, we're always going to have like our weird human ego things going on, but if we kind of follow these um, values and try and educate ourselves more, then we will kind of fall in line with like these more godly values and kind of bring that kingdom of heaven on earth, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, the one thing I wanted to add to that, which is in line with your point, when it comes to sexual morality in Muslim communities, it's usually the community that polices themselves. It's not so much from the perspective of the government. So, like the issue of fornication is usually policed internally by families. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I just
Yeah.
wouldn't let my daughter go hang out alone with her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So where's she's got to be chaperoned with a brother, right? He's always somewhere around. Someone's always somewhere around. So she's never going to be like alone in a room somewhere with a boyfriend. So where's the fornication? They're like, you know what I mean? So it's usually policed.
It's scary
It's
stuff.
not policed by it's not policed by the government. That's
Mm.
what I'm trying to say. It's the government can't control that. It's impossible for a government to manage that. No, it's usually the in Christian culture they used to sew the guy in a bag. They used to wrap him in a cloth and sew it with his hands bound. So then he used to lie there, and then the girl used to be able to be alone with him like that in a bag. In America, by the way, that's how they used to do it. So
Wow.
that
I
was
never
how
heard
they
of
used
that
to
before.
court.
That's pretty
The guy used
crazy.
to be tied up so they can court. So no
Huh?
fornication would take place. This is in America, yes.
Yeah, we were
You can look it up,
animals, man. Tie
you
him
know?
up.
And then that's how they used to court. Yeah. Because that's the only
Amazing.
way they would trust to leave him alone with her. And, so
Yeah.
they used to do that. Yeah.
Oh.
They used to do that. So, yeah, I mean, but that wasn't because the government said so, is what I'm trying to say. You know? Yeah. It was in people's social consciousness to come up with conventions to, do these things. Yeah. I mean, in our sort of culture, the Muslim culture, when a girl and a guy are interested in each other and they get to know each other, they usually do it in the presence of other people. They're
Mm,
never alone,
mm,
you know?
mm.
It's probably a
Yeah.
good practice. Probably a really good practice. Um,
Yeah.
which brings me back to the question though. So I think we're all kind of in agreement that they can't really police it because what happens behind closed doors. You don't have everybody deserves the right to privacy, so you can't just police what
Mhm.
goes on behind closed doors. But the consequences of these actions, should the government be intervening for the consequences of these actions? Is my question. We have people that go on and protest publicly. My body, my choice. So I should be able to do whatever I want, and then they do whatever they want, and the consequences that come with it, they think the government should intervene and help them. It's like tell the government stay out of my business, but when I fuck up, come save me now. So either the
Mhm.
government is fully in or the government is fully out. So if you want them
Mhm.
in when you have a consequence, you can't say, "Well, I'm going to do whatever I want until it comes time to me having to deal with the consequence of my action." Then the government's going to come in and save it now. You know what I mean?
But I think
Well,
I
I mean,
think
that's
I don't
why,
think there's
that's
going
why,
out of the government unless you're not paying taxes or something. Well, you're
So,
in.
no, no,
yeah,
no,
well,
no, but you know what I mean, though, right? I mean, so I'm
I
yeah,
saying
get
yeah,
like
it.
yeah,
when
Yeah, I
yeah.
get
someone,
I get it. I get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
you want to say the government doesn't have the right to regulate sex, but when you mess up with sex, then the government has to step in to pay for your child's maintenance. That's
yes,
why, I mean, I was reading on ancient China as early as 12,000 BC, right? Before the Common Era, before Christ, right? China had laws against fornication, right? That's basically 14,000 years ago. China already had laws against fornication, right? And you ask why, and the reason is simply because fornication results in the collapse of an empire. That was the logic. Because you have all these children that are not spoken for,
Mm,
and they become a tax burden on the society, and they mostly become delinquents, criminals, and thieves. That's the unfortunate situation about bastards, because they just grow up without family ties that can hold them accountable. You know, they're like free agents, like, and usually impoverished, and usually have to resort to crime. You know, And so yeah, so people knew, empires knew, just from the perspective of human experience, that it's not good for women to just have loose children, you know, without an acknowledgement of a father, you know.
Well, men, yeah, I mean men
Yeah.
as well too, right? Men, if you can't financially take care of kids, you shouldn't be having kids.
Well, the thing is, you see, the thing about why they hold a woman more accountable in this regard is because, okay, 99.9% of men are not rapists. Okay. So when a woman opens her legs, it's because she wants to, 99.9% of the time. You understand? And the problem is that men, 99.9% of the time, don't say no. So culturally and structurally in society, they tended to hold women more accountable for having the loose child because that was the only direct way of tracing the child. They don't know who the father is. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, you don't
Gotcha.
know who the father is. So how are you
Yeah,
going
the
to hold
woman's
him
the
accountable?
gatekeeper. Yeah, the
Yeah,
woman's
who
the
is the
gatekeeper
gatekeeper?
essentially.
Yes, exactly.
And
So that's kind of the thing. Yeah.
uh, I wanted to kind of mix it up a little with the bring decentralization and centralization back into it, because
Yeah.
Matt mentioned earlier something like individual decentralization, like if every individual is making decisions and like um, then maybe a small community decides to be pedophiles or something. Um, uh and that anyway, so like he said the word individual decentralization, which made me think like, whoa, what is individual decentralization? And it kind of like one way I thought of it too was like how our individual consciousness is like a centralized control over our body, but then our
Hmm.
body has like parts that like can kind of talk to us in ways and stuff. So, um, like if your back hurts, then you're gonna make the decision to lay down or something like that. And but yeah, I don't know. That kind of brings into the picture babies too, because when there's a baby in your stomach, that's another like decentralized addition to your centralized consciousness or something.
Yeah. So you're bringing it on the micro level now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, you took it to
Guys, listen,
the
I
atomic
gotta go.
level.
I gotta go because I gotta catch my prayer before the sun rises. And I was so interested in this discussion that I
I
left
know
it
it was
now
a
for the
good one.
last minute.
Do you want to do a
So
quick prayer before we go?
so I think you guys just carry on with the conversation. No,
Okay.
go ahead, carry
Okay,
on with
sounds
the
good.
conversation. Okay.
All
See
right.
you guys.
See
Inshallah.
ya. Have a good day,
Okay.
Yassine.
Later, bro. Hopefully we start next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Peace.
bro. Yeah, so you took it down to like an atomic level, bro, where it was like, now you're
Yeah,
talking
I
about
fractaled it.
yeah, the neutrons and the proton aspect of it. Yeah, I was just saying, like, I think we had this conversation numerous times. Is you have a set of boundaries and you do not cross. Like the moment you cross a boundary, it's not a boundary anymore, right? Where do you draw the line? If I say Raj, we work at this place of employment, and I say our start time is at 6:30 a.m. Okay, and our end time is at uh, 6:30 p.m. Let's just leave it at that. 6:30 a.m. Our end time is at 6:30 p.m.
Mhm.
And I want you to start at 6:30 a.m. The reason why I want you to start at 6:30 a.m. is because it coincides with the business aspect of it. Business starts at 6:30, okay? So I need you guys here because at 7, everything's gonna start rolling in. So at 8 o'clock, we're facilitating the operation throughout the day. And at 6:30, let's say business close and the night business begins, okay? Well, what happens is if somebody says, well, you only have to put in your 12 hours, okay? So if I want to work, 5:30 to 5:30 now, right? So what happens when somebody works 5:30 to 5:30, they say, well, I came in at 5:30 and they're not doing anything from 5:30 till 7 now, okay? So now they're not doing anything from 5:30 till 7. My business is suffering because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But they're saying, "Oh, I only have to put in my 12 hours." No, I'm telling you, you have to work 6:30 to 6:30, regardless of what you think. So you can't leave it up to each individual because someone says, "Well, what's the big deal? I'm working 12 to 12." Well, you don't understand the intent of why I told you to work 6:30 to 6:30. Not because I told you you need to work 12 hours. I told you this because this is how the business functions. So that's why you can't leave the general laws up to interpretation for each individual. Some individuals might be mad. Well, I don't feel like I agree with that. Well, in every scenario, somebody's going to be offended. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think like we were talking about, like having that feedback and being able to speak to authority and argue with them even is an important part of like a
Yes.
healthy system so you can make
Well,
develop
so
things and make it better.
yeah, so let's say that for example, right? Let's say 6:30 to 6:30 is a horrible time because traffic's horrible during this time. Okay, so we should have the authority to fight back and say, hey, we want to change the business where now you function 4:30 to 4:30. Okay, so 4:30 to 4:30 works because we're not fighting traffic to get in here now. Okay, so we're not spending an hour and a half in traffic to get to work, right? And then we're still facilitating the business. But understanding what the intent of what the original law was is key, rather than leaving it up to somebody like individual to interpret. Well, I think what God meant was this. Well, you don't even understand the culture of what it meant. Like, you're
Yeah, and
reading
that's
it,
why
you're
we have
reading it from a
judges,
Western
right?
lens.
So judges are able
That
to like
you, yep.
study it and do that interpretation. And
I didn't
yeah.
realize it turned off my camera, bro.
Yeah, I missed you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right though. That's why you have judges. Judges are educated. They're lawyers that went to school and know how to interpret the law. And when the law was originally scripted, right? They're educated on that versus us. When we read something, we might interpret it but not understand what the language actually meant. You know, so yeah. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
then
going down to, I was just saying, going down to that microscopic level, that each community should be interpreting the law themselves, and I don't agree with that.
mm,
I think like each community should like could be able to facilitate their infrastructure or how they want to execute the law, like your brother was talking about.
yeah.
Which is perfectly fine, but the interpretation of law should not be up for debate, in my opinion.
Yeah, but how can you say that when, like, say, two authorities would interpret a law differently? Then it is up for
Well, that's
debate,
what
right?
that's what your brother said. It was in the hypothetical scenario was you had a
Mm,
group of individuals that came together and said, "Hey, this is what the law. This is the interpretation of the law." Okay, and I guess God actually was the authority. He said the law, wrote it, and this is don't commit murder, don't do this, don't steal, no adultery, know this, know this, know this. So understanding what those laws are first and foremost should be like what we know at a federal level. Like everybody has to abide by these. There should be no debate about what these basic laws are. And if we're debating about that, our infrastructure has failed to begin with. You know what I mean? So that's once you get to that point, hey, this is what the law means, and we don't go past this. If we go past this, there's like penalties for going past this. And in cases, it's not going to be fair for everybody, right? The perception of fair is not going to be there for everybody. Um, some people are going to be offended, but that's in every case. No matter what you do, we see people now because we bent these laws so much. how many people are offended because these laws were bent so much, you know? So offense should never be considered when we're interpreting what the law is, because like offense is it's in the eye of the person who's being offended, you know? You might be offended by something I'm not, you know? But
That's why
is
I
your
think
offense
empathy is important though, so you can like under put yourself in someone else's shoes and then see, well, maybe I would be, or nah, that's not, that guy is being a pussy, or I don't know.
well, yeah, empathy I think is an important characteristic just to be able to help people like come to God, right? Um Being able to empathize with somebody would be able to we would reach so many more people for their salvation, you know, rather than just saying, no, this is a law, and if you don't abide by it, you're going to hell. You know, no, we should be empathizing with these people, but we should also be telling them like the truth, you know. Here's why we abide by this law, and I'm sorry
Well,
that that offends you, you know.
yeah. Well, I think like I would disagree, and I would say individual interpretation like is fine because we can all read now. Like if you can't read, then okay, you need someone to tell you what's up. But if you can read for yourself, you can read the Bible or you can read the scripture and you can attempt to understand it. And yeah, no, sometimes it is like confusing or something, and then you need some authority to kind of explain it to you or something like that. But I do think there is we are humans with a brain, and we have, and if you can read, you have the capacity to take in the word of God yourself from the source, right? From the word itself. And that is what's cool about religion is it is this like book. And yes, there's different translations and this and that, so there's a little bit of diversity and maybe not as pure things going on with the translations and stuff, but it is like if you can read and stuff, it's as close as you can get to God's word. And so I think, yes, there's this individual interpretation that takes place when you do that process. But I think those individual interpretations do add up, and like you do, like when the group becomes big enough, you like a centralization will just kind of pop up to manage things so we can like, I don't know, actually do stuff, I guess.
Well, I think I'm gonna counter again because I've heard people make cases for things that they've interpreted that were horrible. I heard people try to justify slavery by using verses in the Bible that really had nothing to do with slavery, and then they're actually what language, like what version of the Bible are you reading, right? Like what was the original intent of that verse, right? So I've heard somebody tell me how they were trying to justify slavery because Jesus said a slave is not above his master, right?
Hmm.
So if you heard that, you're like, oh man, that's all you heard.
Whoa,
Oh man,
Jesus.
Jesus, no, whoa, Jesus justified slavery. No, well that verse had nothing to do with slavery, right?
Hmm.
Jesus was explaining to his disciples during that time that if they capture me, they will go after you too. And that's just a version that they use the word slave and master. There's another version they said a servant is not above his master. But what he was saying was, you guys as disciples are my servant, and if they're coming after me, they're going to come after you as well. So you cannot leave up like individual interpretation. There has to be like an authority that you understand like what the context was behind it. Uh, that this is how we get to a point that people justify things because hey, it said it right here. I could read it with my own eyes. If you read that, you heard that with your own eyes that Jesus said a slave is not above his master. And that's all you heard, Raj. What are you saying? You know, what are you thinking? Oh, damn,
Well,
I
I'm
guess
thinking
slavery
like Jesus is clearly talking about God and humans.
is. Well, I mean, see, that's your interpretation, though, you know.
Yeah.
But I gave you the case in point about how somebody tried to use that verse to justify slavery.
Hmm.
You know, So there's no I think there's just some things that you have to have essential authority for. And like when we interpret the law, I think if we had all abided by these laws that God implemented, like we'd have a way better society than we have now. You know, and the morality, people would love each other, people would treat each other. There'd be community. You know, everybody would treat each other better.
Well, I would disagree. I think that is the state we have now. Like, I think we have authorities interpreting the law and saying how it is, but not enough people trying to read and get their meaning for themselves. And it leads to like um maybe apathy or something like that. Like, oh yeah, they're doing the church thing. I'm just gonna do the basics and like, I don't know, whatever. Um, yeah.
I mean, to just bring you back to that one point that I made was, but how do we determine what an appropriate sexual relationship is? And you know,
Yeah,
if
I
someone is
think you
saying,
kind of
if
go,
someone is saying,
yeah,
well,
you go to the Bible, right? And you kind of like see what God did to people who had inappropriate sexual things or appropriate sexual things, or it just says it, right? It just says if it's like of the devil or of God or something like that, right?
so biblically, I guess this question once again, biblically,
I
does
guess
it explicitly on biblically does it explicitly explain uh how do I put this? Uh, does the Bible justify abortion or not?
are you asking me?
Yes.
I
And if you
think
don't
it
know, and if you don't know, I said we should go do some research and actually look into this, right?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
like
I
God
mean,
is
I think we should do more script, like actual looking at scripture and stuff, just in general. I think it's good. I remember before I was like, ah, scripture, but now I'm like, oh yeah, scripture is key.
yeah, you're really into it now. Yeah, you're really into it now. But
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it is explicit, man, and like these things that like God says are like abominations and detestable to him, you know. And if someone reads that and they say, well, you know, what I think he meant, like for an example, when your brother gave us that verse the other day about orphans, right? And I gave my question that I asked about about the orphans, and your interpretation was, well, what I think it was, he wasn't actually talking about orphans. He was talking about something in general, you know? So that's why I'm saying, like, you could look at it and we can get two completely different, you know, uh,
absolutely.
uh,
Yeah,
two complete,
absolutely.
and then they could be like, and the example that I'm giving isn't, we weren't on like polar sides of like the fence, but like people can be on polar sides of the fence. But one person
Sure.
is saying, yeah, you can kill babies. Another one is saying, no, they're not even a human being. And you know, I did a presentation in one of these podcasts about why abortion was wrong, and then how God said, you know, I knew you before you were born. I know every hair, and you know, I had a purpose for you. So this idea that you know the child is not actually a child until they're born, it's you know, it's not scripturally backed. You know, um, so people can look at this and you can show them this and then they'll still disagree with you, you know. That's why I think you need to have some type of central authority just for the laws. Not like your brother said, not describing like, hey, Jesus Christ is like God or whether he's just a prophet, you know. That's not something that I think society would need to function. I think that's something that will depend on your salvation, right? But for society to function, we have to have basic laws, and we don't violate these laws. So I don't know. And how do we interpret these laws? And I don't think you can leave it up to individual interpretation. Is my just my view.
And I appreciate we're talking a lot about laws. Laws is like a good thing to talk about because I think it's one of the things that people are like hesitant of when they want to join a religion. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to follow all these rules and like there's all these things, blah blah blah." And one like way I like the description of laws is that it's kind of like the rind to like a fruit, or like in sugar cane, it's kind of like the fibrous part of the sugar cane. And the love of it is like the juice, the sugar. And
Mm.
so if you have all these laws without love, it's just kind of like dry, like nasty stuff. But if you have all these laws with love, then that makes it like an awesome thing, right? A fruit that you can eat. And
So I think when God like designed these laws, he did design them with love and with our best interest in heart, right?
I think so,
Like
yeah.
if I think if we follow these laws, like we have uh a thriving society that actually has morality and loves one another, like Jesus said, like what the most important command was love the Lord and God, love the Lord with all your heart and soul, and love one another as you love yourself, right? So like love God first and then love one another as you love each other, as you love yourself, basically, and he said that was actually the most important commandment. And
Yeah, those commandments encompass all the others. Like if you do those two, like all the
exactly.
other done.
Exactly. If you love God, you will obey God. It's not like, oh, I love God, but I'm gonna go out and still murder people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you
No,
should
you
be
don't
loving your
love God.
I think he said, didn't he say like loving your neighbor was as important or something?
Well, he said the love your God with all your heart. And this is the most important. Love God with all your heart and soul, and love one another as you love yourself. Right. So loving God first is the key, because if you
No,
love
but I
God,
thought
you'll
loving your neighbor, let's bring up the scripture because I thought
yeah
there was
pull that
some
up.
word about like equivalence of loving your neighbor and God, but maybe I'm mixing it up in my
You might be, but if you love God
I do that
first,
often. I wouldn't put
you
it past me.
nah, not a big deal. But if you love God first, you'll obey Him, right?
Do you
And
know
if you're obedient to
what
God,
verse that is?
um, it's one of the Gospels, dude. It's probably in all four of the Gospels, to be honest. But the what that's what is Jesus's what did Jesus say the most important commandment was? He said this is like above all the most important commandment. And Jesus said specifically, if you'll love me, you'll obey me. You know, like if you love me, you'll obey me. Like
Mhm.
you love me, you won't do the things that you're not supposed to do because you love me, because you have that respect for me, because you fear me. Um, yeah.
Okay, love the Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And second is like it. Love your neighbor. So I think I took the is like it as like some sort of equivalence, but I don't know. I guess that's my interpretation.
But no, but I think this is one of them that if you just do that, exactly what they said, and that
Yeah.
that encompasses everything, like he said. If you love God, you'll obey Him,
You want to
and if
hear
you're obeying God,
the variations of the commandments? I got one from Matthew, Mark, and one from Luke. Okay. Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Mark
all the
12.
law and the prophets, that's crazy. See,
That's
see,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
That's why I really like that because it really simplifies all the complicated stuff a bit. I don't know. Mark 12, 28 through 31. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. And Luke 10:25 through 28. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind. It's interesting how it kind of adds strength and then flips it. Um, and love the neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live.
So I want you to, I guess, ask now, what does it mean to love God biblically? What does it mean to love God biblically? Like, what does God describe?
I think it's like for me, I kind of think about like a woman, like when you're kind of in love with a woman or something and you're like thinking about them all the time and there's nothing you wouldn't do for them and you just want to be with them all the time and it's like you could almost do no wrong either because you love them and they love you and um yeah, so it's like almost yeah, and then so I just think about that in terms of God maybe, and that's like maybe as close as I can get.
I think we should do like some type of homework on this. Um, how do you know? I guess the question would be was how do you know you're loving God the way He wants you to love Him? You know,
Well, I think
and
what you're wanting to lead to is like deeds or something, no?
no, no.
Behavior.
I mean, God, no, no. I think it's explicit. Like when
Hmm.
God says, "This is how you show me you love me." Let's say, for example, my wife's real big on like love languages, and as husbands, we struggle with a lot. We suck at a lot of shit too. But like, you're familiar with like love languages?
Yeah, there's the touch, gifts,
Yeah, nah.
affirmations.
I have words of
You're
affirmation.
probably good at affirmations.
No, I'm not. No, no, I'm a acts of service is mine.
Oh, okay,
My
yeah,
language, I
yeah.
guess. Acts of service, I guess, is mine. But like, if you're with a woman and her love language is words of affirmation, but my love language is acts of service, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm going above and beyond every day, making sure everything's taken care of, that they have everything that they need, that there's this. Here's acts of service. I'm going well above and beyond because that's how I show love as acts of service, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the woman doesn't perceive love that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Her love is she needs words of affirmation, So if you're not constantly telling her, affirming that love, like, "Oh, I love you, you're so great, you're the greatest thing on earth," like she really thinks that you don't love her.
Mm-hmm.
So applying that to like what I was trying to say is like God has like love language as well. And it's not just a feeling with him, like, and he says faith without works is dead, right? So obviously, as a Christian, we believe you're not saved by the works you do, you're saved by grace, right? And you're saved because Jesus died only. That's it. That's why you're saved. But there'll be a fruit of your savior, your salvation. Like you'll have fruit from it. You'll know if someone's truly saved by the way they act, the way they behave. I can easily tell you all day I'm a Christian, but if I'm going out and I'm constantly involved in sexual immorality, and I'm constantly doing stuff inappropriately that I know I'm not supposed to be doing. Am I really saved? You know what I mean? So when God's asking, like, when I'm asking, how does God know that you love Him? It's because you obey Him, you obey His commandments. Like, and you're not just obeying Him like because it's like an act. It's like you're obeying Him because you have like conviction. to obey him. Like you really want to obey him, you want to please him, you want to speak his love language. Essentially, it's not just saying I can do no wrong, because yeah, you can 100% do wrong. Like I was describing, like a woman would never know you love her if you're not speaking her language. So if you're not speaking that language, and like for the vice versa, someone could say like if your love language is like the acts of service, and someone is just telling you all day that they love you, but they ain't doing shit for you. You're gonna be like, man, this person, all they do is saying they love me. That's it. All they do is say it, but they don't do it. You don't do anything to prove it. So yeah, yeah. God has a love language, man, and you got to speak His love language. You can't just say, "Oh, I love the Lord. I love the Lord," and then you're good. So, and the Scripture actually substantiates what I'm saying. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
why
I
I'm saying
like.
you can't leave it up. Go ahead, bro. My bad.
No, you're good. I like what Abdul Baha says about, or someone, now I forget who. They define faith by abundance of deeds and fewness of words. And I think that speaks to what you say, because it's not necessarily like, oh, I do these deeds and then I get saved, right? It's like you're saved, therefore you do these deeds naturally, and you and yeah, you're just doing
Exactly.
them. Hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. And you're not doing them like as a chore. You're doing them because you actually want to. You love God. You want to please Him. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? It'll come naturally to you. So yeah, yeah. We're on that. We're actually on the same exact page on this, man. It's pretty crazy.
Crazy,
We
man.
actually agree. We actually agree 100% on what we just said, man.
Do
Yeah.
we though? Because well, one thing I was that you said is it's not like you can do no wrong. And I think that was an interesting point because like in the Gnostic um Bibles, they kind of talk about like sin not existing or something like that, or it's kind of interesting. And
Well,
it's like it's all one.
hold on. Which gospel are you referring to first and foremost? Like the
I
Gnostic
think it was
ones?
the Gospel of Thomas.
But the Gospel of Thomas, from what I remember, it was like kind of chopped up. Like they got fragments of it. They don't have like the whole gospel. And from what
Yeah,
I
there
read
there's
though,
usually like
what I,
missing pieces. It's a lot of sayings of Jesus though, is basically the Gospel of Thomas. Like Jesus said this, and he said and this and this and this. And there's like stuff about like, oh, there like I tell you there is no sin or something. He says something crazy shit like that. And I'm like, "Oh, whoa, that's a weird one. Like that's different." But like it's so like I feel like the one-way love, like, oh, I'm gonna love you, but I don't really know you, I don't really trust you, but I'm just gonna say I love you, then that's more of a one-way love, I think. And then you can do wrong, I think, in a one-way love. But if you both love each other and you kind of have an understanding or something, then there's almost like this can do no wrong aspect. Like if you fuck up, don't worry, I got your back. Like I'm not gonna
oh
like,
well
something like
that's
that.
but that's yeah. So that's the thing though with God though. Because God made a cut. So we should have a whole conversation on what covenant is, like what covenant actually is, because that would be an
We
interesting
we we
one.
had the covenant conversation, right? It was the agreement or whatever. We did a whole episode on it.
We might have to go revisit that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when God makes a covenant, like He is incapable of violating His covenant. Like He makes a covenant with
You
man,
just said
knowing
God
that
is
man.
incapable. You can't say that.
Yeah, I get it. I get it, man. God. I guess the point I'm making is because he's just, there's no way he could violate his covenant like with you. Like,
I don't know, maybe. Yeah.
okay, but what
Like
I guess
one
what
thing
I'm
is
saying
like
is this: God,
he willeth what he
God
willeth.
made
So
it.
there's some
No, no,
element of
no,
just
no.
like, I don't know, hands up.
Yeah, but yeah, but God made a covenant with man, knowing that man was gonna violate this covenant.
Mm.
You know,
Hmm.
And God, knowing that he would never violate this covenant, like he knew that man was basically going to spit in his face, and he was still. So when we look at like the covenant he made with Abraham, right? Like no matter what, God said, "I got your back. No matter what, no matter what you do, how jacked up you are, I got your back." And then we look at like the stories biblically, and like, holy shit, did he have people's back? And like people really shit the bed, man. You know what I mean? I mean, like shit the bed, like the worst of the worst way you could like shit it, like full blown diarrhea, spray, you know what I mean? And he still like had their back, you know. That's what I'm saying. Like maybe the improper word is God will never. The proper way of saying it is God will never violate His covenant. When He makes it with you, it's yes, and that's yes forever. If you violate it, yeah, there's going to be some consequences to you violating, but I'm still going to have your back, and uh, you know, I'm gonna see this covenant through, and we see it all throughout. You go back to like Jacob, and Jacob was just like this grimy, sneaky, like a Joffrey from Game of Thrones type of individual, right? And you look at how jacked up his family was, but God still fulfilled His covenant that He uh, made with Abraham, even though that Jacob was jacked up, even though every generation, like, that you had a brother had sex with one of Abraham or one of Jacob's sons had sex with one of Jacob's wives, like, and like you see like Maury Povich meets Jerry Springer, meets Jersey Shore, meets, I don't know, the most dramatic novella, soap opera, whatever, and that was the story of Abraham's life. And guys, like, look at how, if we look at like Jacob from today's perspective, we think like trailer trash, like, trash. But God still fulfilled His covenant in spite of him being the degenerate that he was. Still fulfilled it. David was, that's another story. David did some grimy shit, and God still fulfilled it.
So wait, so can we just go over the covenant real fast there? For
Mhm.
Abraham, the agreement was, okay, I was gonna kill my son. You called it off last second, and that was that like when I was gonna kill my son, that was me kind of doing my part, and then you're gonna fulfill the covenant now and make my family like the leader of this land or something. Is that the idea or
You'll have more descendants than there are grains of sand, and basically, like, God was just saying, I rock with you, you know, no matter what, I rock with you.
and then how would how
Because,
would how would they break the covenant? Like what would be the thing that would break it? How could they become a covenant
well,
breaker, I guess?
by disobeying God in general, man, you know, disobeying His laws or being disobedient to something He blatantly told them to do, like
Are there
God
levels
told
to the
Abraham.
laws for the covenant breaking, or is it like is like a small sin consider a break of the covenant?
I would say there's probably levels, and I'd say a small sin is still probably a break of the covenant, right?
Okay,
But
yeah.
like sometimes God gave like strict, concise, like direct orders, right? Where He said, "Hey, you know what, Abraham? I see your wife Sarah over there. Like, she really wants a son. I'm gonna give her one, and that's it. So just trust me. I'm gonna give her one, man." And then okay, he goes back and he tells Sarah, "Hey, God said we're gonna have a son." So they're thinking like, oh, they probably getting jiggy with it right then, and you know, and nothing's happening. And keep in mind, they're old, like '90s type old, like people lived a lot longer in those days, but so like '90s, they're well past the fertile ages, and Sarah looks at Abraham and said, maybe what he meant was if you sleep with my slave, you sleep with my maidservant, that uh, we'll have a son through them. And then that's where Ishmael came from, right? And then Ishmael was a result of Abraham's disobedience. You know, I told you I was going to give you a son through her, but you disobeyed me, and like did it your way, right? Then when they went to Israel, when I was it Egypt, they went to Egypt, and he told Sarah to act like he was his sister so they wouldn't kill him. And I guess Sarah, she was probably like some really, really good looking woman, right? And so he let the Pharaoh sleep with his wife, right?
Mm.
So the Pharaoh committed adultery, and Abraham deceived him, you know? And God's like, hey, you know what, man? You jacked up. There's going to be consequences to this. And the consequences were, believe it or not, Abraham got a lot of wealth. So it seems like he got rewarded for it, but it ended up leading to like him having an estranged relationship with his nephew, which led to like issues and him going to Sodom and Gomorrah. And you look at it, man, every one of these consequences, every one of these actions, there was a consequence to, but God still said, I rock with you no matter what. You know what I mean?
And
So
then
when God makes that,
when it
go
comes
ahead,
to
bro.
Abraham's descendants, are like, is all of humans considered to be Abraham's descendants, or is it like the Jews, or like how does that work again? I can't really remember.
So we're all descendants of Noah, but Abraham would be like, uh, it'd be like the Jews, essentially the Jews, you know, because the Israelites, they came from actually, what was his name? Israel, was it Jacob? Yeah, Jacob. Jacob. That's that's right. Jacob is where the 12 tribes of Israel come from. Like, really look
Mm,
at this. Jacob, his name turned into Israel because Israel means like wrestled with God,
mm,
fought with God. So he changed his name because an angel came down. He actually got into a fight with an angel, you
mm.
know? Like, really look how jacked up Jacob was, and that's where the 12 tribes of Israel came from. And that's what tells you how God fulfills his covenant, man. And like, I mean, Jacob's life was just filled with chaos, like disorder, stress, you name it, man. You don't want that life, but God still fulfilled this covenant through Jacob. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it speaks
And
to
as a
like how much God loves us, because like even through all the mess ups, like how can someone like have that much patience with people, right? It's like um yeah, it's like a love type patience that um
well, what imagine though, like
mm,
if he wasn't that way, if he wasn't so merciful, so forgiving,
we'd
so
be dead. We'd all not
well,
exist.
well, we would no, we wouldn't want anything to do with him. Well, that too, we wouldn't have anything to do with him because he'd be just like a human, you know.
Mm,
So how many times have like a girl or just a person hurt you? I don't ever want to talk to that person again, you know. But that's not how God works, you know. God loves you because He loves you, and there's no, it's unconditional, you know. No matter what,
yeah.
there's some
Another
there's
another
well there's things you
translation
can
of mercy I heard was steadfast love, and I thought that was a cool thing.
yeah just in general, man. So we got a God that is like this, and He fulfills His covenant no matter what. So He tells you what it means to love Him back. Like, speak my love language is what He's telling everybody back, right? And my love language is, hey man, worship me and be obedient to me, put me above all and be obedient.
Hmm. Yeah,
And that's it. That's what he asks you.
that's it.
And then when I tell this to like people, like, yeah, God just wants you to worship him. That sounds kind of arrogant. Well, he's God, you know, he's the creator of creation, right? It'd be like saying you want your child to honor you on Father's Day. Well, how dare you want your child to honor you on Father's Day? Like, that's kind of arrogant. Why do you think they should honor you? Because they're your father. You're their father. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Right.
yeah. I want my kids to honor me on Father's Day. Like, hey, just just give me some honor, you know what I mean? Tell me something. Hey, happy Father's Day. Well, make me a card, something, you know? It makes you feel like, hey, man, you know, you appreciate what I did for you, you know? So how you show your appreciation back to God is like by worshiping Him and honoring Him. And He's like the only one that's worthy of worship, right? Like, even as a father, I'm not worthy of my kids worshiping me. I think I should be like honored to an extent, you know, but they shouldn't be worshiping me. But yeah, so when I tell this to people who are non-believers, they, well, that sounds like a kind of arrogant God. I don't want to serve a God like that. Well, then there's no helping you, man. You know, He's God, like He's the creator of of all. And if you don't think He's worthy of, you know, that honor and worship, then obviously you're not worthy of being honored on by your children either. You know.
Well, I think the trick is it's like I feel like God designed us to worship him. And if we're not worshiping him, we're going to be worshiping something else. And chances are that something else is going to be leading to the hell road, right? Rather than not the heaven road.
Yeah, you got to avoid. You know, everybody tries to fill it with something, right?
Hmm.
And some people fill it with, you know, some form of addiction. You know, I had a conversation the other day, and it kind of really took a different direction. Where one of the guys was telling me how some people trade one addiction for another, right?
Hmm.
And it reminded me of something your brother had said. But you know, I hear so many stories of people who were like drug addicts, and I turned to Christ, and um, now all I do is just read my Bible all day long, and that's it. And it fulfills me so much. And I couldn't help but think, man, like, is that healthy? Like, is that what God wants you to do? You know, like there's like certain uh if you're just reading the Bible for you, isn't that kind of like a selfish thing as well? You know, if you're just reading it and you're not out like making disciples as well, right?
Yeah.
Uh and your brother brought up a story about the prophet when the woman Muhammad, the woman went up to him and she had makeup or whatever on, was dressed up, and that culture. That's why it's important to understand the culture. Like, a woman's not supposed to be around another man that when she's not married like that, right? She should be covered and whatever. And she says, "Hey, I just because my husband, all he wants to do is pray all day, and he thinks he's doing the right thing." And he mentioned that because he wasn't fulfilling his duties as a husband, like he wasn't honoring God. So, like, you know, some people, like, I just read my Bible all day long. Is that healthy? You know, I don't know. I had that question. Is that
Well, I think it's
what
better
God wants you
than,
to do?
I think it's a better drug than, heroin or, tobacco or whatever drug your choice is. Like if that's kind of what I'm trying to do with myself is I'm trying to move my smoking addiction to praying addiction kind of thing. So um yeah,
Well, the
just
okay.
mhm.
So, that's good. Let's hit that. So you should look this up too one day. The interesting thing about addiction, right, is there was an experiment with lab rats, right, and
Yeah.
they put them in a thing. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, but it's go ahead and say it because it's really good, I think.
So the one rat they put one rat in there, and they had one water bottle that had heroin in it, and had another bottle that just had water. And the rat went to the water bottle with heroin, drank it, then went to the water with water, drank it, and he kept going back to the water bottle with heroin in it, right? So they okay, well they said how heroin's an addicting thing. Okay, well then they changed the experiment. What they did was they put like a bunch of fun shit in there for the rat to do, some little fun rat mazes, and then other rat friends. And when the rat had the option, when he was around this community, he went to um, the one with water versus the one over heroin. So like the addiction shouldn't be like, hey, I want to study, uh, you know, just learn everything there is to learn about the Bible. It's, hey, I need a community. I can't do this on my own.
Yeah, studying with other
So,
people, right? And or praying with
well,
other people. It's a community.
having fellowship. having fellowship with other
Hmm.
people, breaking bread with other people, having relationships with other godly people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the key. And then going out and actually seeking other people who had similar problems, like what you're saying, addiction problems. Like, hey, look, man, I was addicted to meth, whatever it was, and by me committing to like accepting Jesus first and foremost, and then actually being involved in this community, I tell you, this is how it changed me. And if you want to change, like, just give this a shot. You know,
Sure. Yeah. That's well said.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I think that's what I'm saying. I don't think the addiction should be traded for another addiction. I think the void that, like, weed or whatever it is, the drug of people's choice usually isn't their problem. It's how they solve the underlying problem.
Hmm.
Because I had a big drinking problem for a while, like a
Hmm.
big drinking problem. And I found like drinking wasn't my problem. It was like how it was blocking out the other problems, like
Yeah. You were
which
trying to
caused
suppress other things with the drinking.
yeah, which caused even more problems. And it
Right.
was like,
Right.
all right, man, you can't fill that you can't fill a void with addiction, man. Like if you're trading drugs for studying religion, you're never going to be satisfied. Still, like you'll never be satiated. You gotta. It's like you're filling a cup and it has holes in the bottom. You just got to keep refilling it, man. Like when you're, I guess we'll say, truly saved, your cup will just be overflowing that people can drink from you. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But we've been burning the candle at both ends for about 2.5 hours, Raj.
Damn,
That's pretty
bro.
cool.
Yeah. This is a good
No, it was.
conversation.
Hey, you know what, man? I got a confession. I thought this conversation was gonna suck today, bro.
Wow. Oh, this is my sad state. There's the reaction here.
And then I hurry up, man. Where's the sad reaction? But like usually, because sometimes when we come up with these topics, I'm like, oh man, but they always seem to go a direction that I didn't expect them to go. Because when you said like decentralization versus centralization, I immediately thought about our old faithful
Yeah, we didn't
Web3
even get into
crypto.
cryptocurrency and like
Not at
potential
all.
for cryptocurrency and
Not at all.
yeah,
Not at all.
maybe we need a part two.
We didn't get into cryptocurrency at all, bro.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Black Rocks. It's a shadowy uh region of the Web3 world. Check it out.
No, but we actually didn't actually make any crypto references. So, like, honestly, I thought we are gonna get into like decentralized autonomous organizations, and I was
Yeah,
just
me
like, I'm
too.
so over them, you know what I mean, somewhat. But like, but
No.
like, but like when you, uh, the direction it went was not what I was expecting at all, but in a great way. So,
Awesome.
yeah, good, good,
Cool, man.
good job picking the topic, man. Actually, we all kind of picked it right.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's what
pick
I'm
that
saying. You
one though.
can't really I just it's what everyone voted for. It's like the most people picked this one, so it is
Yeah.
what it is.
I didn't, yeah, I didn't pick that one though, man. I don't think I
Oh, you
did. I don't think
didn't?
I voted
Oh,
on
interesting.
it.
Oh, I
Yeah,
thought you would have. I didn't see that.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I did. I don't remember, man.
I don't know. Do you want to do a prayer to close out?
I like when you do your little, you read them there.
All right. I like these ones. Okay. O thou omnipotent Lord, we are all held within the mighty grasp of thy power. Thou art our supporter and our helper. Grant us thy tender mercy, bestow upon us thy bounty, open the portals of grace, and cast upon us the glance of thy favors. Let a vivifying breeze waft over us and quicken our yearn and quicken thou our yearning hearts. Illumine our eyes and make the sanctuary of our hearts the envy of every blossoming bower. Rejoice every soul and gladden every spirit. Reveal thine ancient power and make manifest thy great might. Cause the birds of human souls to soar to new heights, and let thy confidants in this netherworld fathom the mysteries of thy kingdom. Set firm our steps, and bestow upon us unwavering hearts. We are sinners, and thou art the ever forgiving. We are thy servants, and thou art the sovereign Lord. We are homeless wanderers, and thou art our haven and refuge. Graciously aid and assist us to diffuse thy sweet savors and to exalt thy word. Elevate the station of the dispossessed, and bestow thine inexhaustible treasure upon the destitute. Vouchsafe thy strength unto the weak, and confer heavenly power upon the feeble. Thou art the provider, thou art the gracious, thou art the Lord who ruleth over all things. Abdul Baha.
Mm. All right, man.
Awesome. Thanks for an awesome conversation, Matt. We
All
didn't do a
right,
Twitter
bro. We'll
space, but
we didn't do
I
one
want to
before the
do
end of the year
I
either,
want to
though.
do morning prayers. I'm gonna call it prayers and shares.
What time are you trying to do that?
Maybe like 8 or 7 a.m. or maybe 9 or 10 a.m. I don't know. I don't
So
know.
10 a.m. 10. If you're doing it at 10 a.m., it's already noon by me, bro.
Yeah,
You gotta get your
yeah,
shit
it's
together, Raj. You gotta get your shit together, Raj.
well, that's like the later morning, but early morning.
No, no. So I'm not gonna let you get off with that. I'm not gonna let you get away with that. You want to do morning prayers? You need to get up before the sun rises, okay?
Yeah,
And you need to take it serious, right? And you
yeah,
need to be like, all right, like let's just do my wife every morning. And I
yeah.
say this a lot because like the women are kind of like showing men up these days, but like they do a morning devotion at
Oh,
6 a.m. Monday through Friday.
uh-huh.
Um, I said, why as men, why can't we collectively get together? Like, and I get it. I work and my times are odd, but yeah. So I'm gonna say like you need to go a little earlier, Raj.
What do
There's
you think you'd
absolutely
be
no
able to make?
reason.
Do you think you'd be able to make it?
Well,
Like,
yeah. I mean, especially if you're only trying to do, 15, 20 minute thing, that's not a problem at all.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like, yeah, you need to do it earlier. I start work for myself. I start work at 5 a.m.
yeah, and that's like,
My
what
time.
time is that for me? That's 3 a.m. or something?
Three,
2 a.m.
three. I ain't telling you, got to wake up at 3. That's what time I wake up though. Is at 3.
No, no, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
But then a reasonable time for you to hop on is like what?
7, 7ish,
Okay.
7ish. Yeah, or even actually like for me, yeah, no, 7ish is fine, or
So,
7:30,
all right. I
8,
see.
8
I
o'clock.
see how it is.
Eight,
You want me to get up at the times you get up.
I
I'll
think
do
there's
it for
something
you.
godly. No, I think there's something godly about people who wake up early,
I
and
think there's
especially they
something
do it
like
with
magical about the transition period between night and day,
yeah, but waking up early before the sun rises and like
Mm,
with a purpose. If
mm,
you start, let's do a little challenge, Raj,
mm.
because I'm doing like every beginning of every year I do a little challenge. Let's do a little challenge, man. Why don't you
Oh,
just for
cool.
like a start it for let's do make it simple, man. Let's not overdo it. Like for a
Yeah,
week, one
yeah,
week, all right. You're gonna make it intentional. You're gonna wake up before the sun rises, okay?
yeah.
Before the sun rises, set your clock. Wake up before the sun rises, man, and you'll start your day off with morning prayer.
Okay, I could do that.
In just a week, man. If you want me to join you, well, we'll just join. I'll join you. It ain't a problem for me. I go to work. The sun isn't up when I leave work. The sun is set. So it's dark when I go to work and it's dark when I come home.
Oh, that's
Pretty
depressing.
de- yeah, pretty depressing time of the year. So yeah,
Yeah.
let me know that how you want to do that, man. And we'll like I said, we got to do more in 2025. And this isn't a New Year's resolution shit because I don't believe in that. But let's just do
Yeah,
more.
just do it, right? It's always
Yeah, just
we're
do
always
more.
on New Year's resolution mode with the peace hands.
Yep, just do it. So,
Cool.
why don't pick a week and let me know, man.
This week. What do you mean pick a week?
Uh, Monday, this week coming up, Monday through Friday. Want to do it
Start it tomorrow
tomorrow? What time? Because it's
before
not
the
hard
sun
for me. I
comes
usually
up.
would. All right, it'll be up by me when but
Yeah,
whenever
yeah,
you want to
for
start,
me, not
you
for
let me know.
you. That'd be crazy for
Yeah.
me.
Well, yeah, just text me the time, man, and let me know, bro.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
I wake up 5:30 every day. I'm off anyway, so I'll get at you.
All right, awesome, man. Cool, thanks.
All right, Rise. I'll talk
I
to you, man.
appreciate the accountability support. It's good. I
Yeah,
need that.
I do too, man. So you can call me out too, Rise. Don't worry about it.
Well, then what do you need? What do you trying to do this week?
Well, that's probably something I shouldn't be talking online about, but
All right. We'll take it offline.
uh,
Black Rocks things, huh?
no, no, definitely not. Yeah.
All right. All right, Matt. Good chat, man. Have a good week.
All right,
See
later,
you.
Raj.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Peace.
Later.